Sit right down and I'll show you where my dreams began.
I'm Michael Dugan, your culinary host, guiding you through the chef's journey. Join me at the chef's table, where you'll experience stories, secret sauces, signature dishes, and kitchen disasters. Born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, James Trees began his culinary career as a teenager at the Mirage Hotel and Casino on the Strip. Prior to attending the Culinary Institute of America, then rising through the ranks under chefs including Heston Blumenthal, Eric Ripert, Bradley Ogden, Michael Mina, Akasha Richmond, and Ray Garcia. He opened multiple restaurants across the U.S. as corporate sous chef for the Mina Group and spent several seasons behind the scenes with Gordon Ramsay on Kitchen Nightmares and Hell's Kitchen. I am so excited to welcome to the show Chef James Trees.
Hi, guys.
James, thanks for doing this. Really excited that you're here. I just want to share a quick story about how we connected for our listeners and for your listeners. We flew into Vegas a couple weeks ago and we went to the U2 concert at the Sphere. What I didn't realize that a lot of things were going to unfold in that weekend, including connecting to my Aunt BJ, my cousin Christina, and Joe Kane. And Joe is Christina's husband. And all these things evolved. On Friday night, we flew in, and at 6:30, about 6:40, we were at the Rio, just outside of the Strip. And my aunt picked us up, and she whisked us away to El Solito Posto. And this incredible family experience unfolded because Joe is a partner there with you. And then this all came about because we were going to Esther's Kitchen for brunch on Saturday. So we show up at Esther's Kitchen. We're sitting down having this amazing meal. My wife loves it. I love it. We just felt so welcomed into this restaurant. And this chef comes out of the back and stands there next to us and says, "I'm James Trees." And Joe texted me and said I should come out and say hello. The next thing, we're sitting down for half an hour having a conversation with you. And you made us feel so welcome. And I had to say, why don't you come on the show? And I'm so honored to have you.
It's an honor to be here. And thank you so much for checking out the restaurants and being a part of it. And we're just lucky that we have the opportunity to do things like that and get to see people and meet people who are coming into town and might think that Vegas is just this 1.2 mile strip of road down the middle of it.
Yeah.
I don't realize there's 2.7 million people living around in the valley. And it's funny because a lot of the things that you hear about in Vegas are about the wild, crazy parties and all that, and how we have these huge clubs and how these big name restaurants. Outside of that, there's a real community full of working professionals, families, and stuff like that. And I really feel like it's our job to create the restaurants that Las Vegas needs, or it'll all be chains and corporations and stuff like that. And that's where Jeff and Joe and I got together and created El Solito Posto, because there wasn't that kind of neighborhood restaurant up in Summerlin. And we definitely wanted to add that to the portfolio and make it something that was really special. Like maybe 500 feet, 300 feet from that space, I have the wine bar Ada's as well. And my team over there is just amazing as well. And I feel so good that you guys came in on a Friday night and had an amazing
It was
experience.
Incredible. Oh, God.
And then Saturday, you're right down at Esther's. And
wow.
That's a beautiful thing.
The experience that we had was indescribable. My wife loves Italian, and we got married in southern Italy in this little town called Gravina, and Gravina in Puglia, in the Puglia region in southern Italy. And she introduced me to the Italian culture about 20 years ago. I fell in love with it. I started learning about the food and the culture and the people. I remember talking to my aunt, who I hadn't talked to for years. And we were coming to Vegas. She was so excited. She goes, "You got to meet Joe or connect with Joe." I had connected with him very briefly, but meeting him again was amazing. Seeing my cousin Christina was amazing. Seeing my aunt. But we all did it at your restaurant. and the service and the hospitality and the people. That's what I never got a chance to tell you. And here I am telling it to you on our podcast. But you know what? It's a very special thing. It's a very special memory that you created for us that we will never forget.
And that's huge. And the team over there, Chris Mattson and Adam Rios, who's my chef there, they are just the best of the best. And honestly, I've never known a person like Joe, who's just as straightforward, shooting, caring, cares about what we do, cares about the restaurants. I mean, like, you couldn't ask to have a better partner than Jeff and Joe. They're amazing.
That's awesome. And so as we get into it, now we're going to dive into the interview, but I wanted to share that with you. And that's the why this all came about. And it's very special.
Cool.
And let's jump into this. Let's start with, can you introduce us to your culinary background? What led you to become a chef? And was there anything early on in your childhood that really sparked that interest?
So the way I got involved with cooking at the very beginning was there was a vocational technical school called TTC here in Las Vegas. And I had a crush on this girl. And she said in the middle of German class, she was like, hey, we should go to this and see what's going on because we can get out of
German
doing German class, right?
Okay.
Terrible. I was so bad at it. I don't even know why.
Yeah, that's hard.
But she was cute, so I was like, okay, cool. So we went into this thing, and they talked about all these different programs: electrical, nursing, cooking, horticulture, which was a big thing because obviously Bellagio was about to open and they had this giant thing and they needed interns. So they started this horticulture thing, and also landscaping around Las Vegas is huge. So,
I imagine.
Yeah. So I got to go to this thing and the girl, her name was Amanda Whitehouse. And she was like, she's like, oh, I think I'm going to take a cooking class. This will be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And I was like, sure, I'll take a cooking class with you. I'll also carry your books and walk behind you or do whatever you want.
I love it. Oh my God.
And so the next year we signed up for that thing, and then we show up and I show up and she never showed up.
Oh, wow.
She decided not to do it. And I was up there taking these culinary classes. And I was like, okay, it's cooking. I got to learn how to cook. And then I found out that really cooking is three of my favorite things rolled into one. And that is, it's art, it's science, and it's history. If you take those three things and apply them to food, it explains a lot about the world in general. Because you have the science, which is the actual cooking, the chemistry part of what we do every day, which is we take food and we manipulate it through using heat, cold, chemicals, all different things.
Sure.
So that's one thing. And then the second thing is everything tastes good. And obviously I like food. You have art, which is like the way that you can take your idea and put it onto a plate. And then history is the bridge that takes the science part and the art part and puts them together in a cohesive way where it makes sense. So when I found that out, I was hooked. And at the same time, obviously, like, the Food Network had just started. I remember watching Sarah Moulton and Mario Batali.
Yeah.
They had this crazy show called Iron Chef, where these guys would get like the most random ingredients and create this amazing dishes with them. And it was all in Japanese. And I was like, I'm into this. All right, this is cool. And I like literally used to fall asleep at night watching Iron Chef.
Wow.
And it was great. So that's how I got started. And basically the way I ended up as an intern was there was an internship available during your second year. Okay. And if you wanted to go do it, and honestly, the people in my class were not that, they really didn't care about like cooking. They didn't think of this.
Not motivated. Yeah.
It's a class in high school.
Sure.
And I was like, I want to go to the Mirage. I know my best friend's dad works at the Mirage. He says it's the best place. He says Steve Wynn is the best dude ever. Let's go there. All right. And so I really rallied and made sure I did everything. Obviously, I was top of my class because I think this ATTC was for students who really didn't do good in school. So they needed a vocational thing. I was the guy who got 1380 on my SATs and could have gone to Pepperdine with a scholarship, but decided not to because I wanted to cook.
Oh, I get it. I totally get it.
Tell that back in 1997 or 1996, not a good choice. So yeah, looking back, it worked out. But that's how I ended up getting the internship at the Mirage. And then I got in there, and the first day I was in the butcher shop. And they said I have my first 2 hours at school, which is second and third period because I don't wake up early.
Sure.
Now I do. But back then I didn't. I would go to second, third period, and then I would go to the Mirage, and I would work, and we were supposed to work for 3 hours. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll work for 3 hours. And they gave me these tri-tips that we were cutting down into stew meat.
Yeah.
And they gave me a 55-gallon barrel of them. And they're like, here's how you do it. Here's how you cut it. Here's
right. All day. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And I stayed there until I finished the barrel.
Wow.
And it was 11 hours later, and my hands were completely frozen because this is a completely integrated butcher shop. And I watched the shift change. And finally, the chef was like, the head butcher at the Mirage was like, oh, you're really into this, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, all right, we'll see you tomorrow. I came back the next day and did 11 hours again and did 11 hours again. And I was leaving at midnight. And at the end, and so you do butcher shop, then you do main kitchen, then you do all these things. And you do the Italian kitchen and the steakhouse. And I got
sounds like cooking school to me.
Oh, it was great. Here's the thing: it was the same internship.
It aligns, right?
Yeah, it was the same internship as the CIA people were doing.
Yeah.
So people who were going to the CIA were doing the same internship as I was doing when I was 16. So when I turned 17, I was like, oh, I need to get a job. I need to get a car and this and that. And they were like,
and a girl.
why don't you work here? And I was like, yes, please. Yes. Okay. And so I had stayed. So after the first few months, I had met Chef Freddie Roget. And Chef Freddie was the room chef. That was like the chef of the restaurant, which would end up becoming Alex Strada Kitchen, then Renoir.
Oh, wow.
Which is a 2 Michelin star restaurant. And so I got to work with them, and that was a huge opportunity. And I remember I would cut like a gallon of tomato concasse, and the chef would just throw it in the sauce because it wasn't good enough. It wasn't cut perfect enough.
Yeah.
And all those things from the ground up, like peeling shrimp. Like I can peel shrimp faster than any human being ever. Like it's my favorite thing to do because like I learned how to do it. And I just did it. Peeling potatoes. I peeled so much potatoes. I made so much mushroom soup, right? I milled so many cases of tomatoes. Like whatever the crappiest job in the kitchen was, that's what I did. And then when I got my job, my first job that I had to do was put away food, sweep the kitchens, and then peel garlic. Like the amount of garlic I have peeled. When I worked for Luke Palladino, it was 6 quarts of garlic every single day, hand peeled.
Oh, wow.
And I had no reservation about it. I would just attack it. Whatever the worst job was, I wanted that one, and I wanted to knock it out and do it the best and get faster at it. And I just became obsessed. And I was obsessed with that. And I graduated high school, worked for about a year and a half. And then my mom was like, okay, cool. Do you want to be a line cook for your whole life? And I was like, yes. And she was like, she had a master's, 64, ended up getting her doctorate later on in life. And she was an educator, and she was like, you need to go to school. She's like, where did your bosses go to school? And I was like, they went to the CIA in New York. And being a kid from Vegas, that was never going to be in the cards for me.
Oh my God.
And she said, it is in the cards for you. Let's make it happen. Let's see what we can do. And here you go. And now I have this just
That's so awesome. Oh, it's so awesome, man. I've interviewed several chefs and friends from CIA. So this means a lot to hear that because it's just really cool. Really cool.
I didn't have the money for me to go to school. That wasn't like really a thing. So my Aunt Esther I had some money saved. But
your Aunt Esther?
Yep. My Aunt Esther.
Oh my God. Okay. All right.
She was the one who
put it together.
She wrote the check for my room and board because I didn't know what room and board was. I didn't know what terms were.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to do this. And I was like, oh, I'm $8,000 short. She's like, I'll pay for it. And so she gave me the opportunity to go to CIA.
Wow.
Like without her, this would not have happened.
Okay.
And obviously later on down the road, I named one of my first restaurant, Esther's Kitchen, after her.
That's what I was going to ask. And oh my God, what a story. That's incredible.
And then when I got to school, I was the poorest kid in school. You have to remember like this, like in 1998 and 2000 when I actually went, in 2000 when I went to CIA, basically the way kids got into Cornell when they didn't have the grades is they went to CIA for 2 years and then transferred because Cornell is the Ivy League transfer for CIA.
Oh,
so that was a way for screw-ups to get into an Ivy League school to make their rich mommy and daddy really happy. And I was there because I wanted to cook and I wanted to learn everything there was about food. I hit the ground running, and the first thing I did was I got a job at the school serving tables, like in the Great Hall. And I got to know every chef. I got to know who they were. My classes were great. I had amazing instructors, and
wow.
It wouldn't have been.
Who was your favorite? Who's your favorite instructor?
I have a couple.
Okay.
I have a couple.
Let's hear about him.
Chef Andrini. Chef Andrini was a Swiss chef, and even though he was more Italian than Swiss, and Chef Andrini had lived in Canada and had a couple different restaurants, and then he decided to come be an instructor at CIA because he wanted to become a certified master chef. And that was a lot of the chefs that we had. They wanted to be CMCs, and you had to have education credits, and that was part of it. And then you had to take the test. His rule was he didn't give anybody an A. And I remember that I had him for skills 1. And I was like, this is our first kitchen class. I have to have an A, no matter what. I've been working at 5-star restaurants. And I remember, I don't even think I could do it anymore. I probably could. But I remember that the first time he was like, all right, we're going to go through knife skills. And I finished all my knife skills super fast. And he looked at everything. Well, I'm like sweeping the floor because there was nothing else to do. And he's like, can you tourne? And I was like, yes, chef, I can tourne. And so he showed me, he's like, okay, can you tourne a vegetable like this? And I said, absolutely, chef. And I'm a cocky 19-year-old me, which is,
of course,
trust me, I was a fucking pain in the ass. I tourneed a potato behind my back for him.
Oh my God.
And he looked at it and he said, oh, that's a B. It is really like cocky.
Instead of an A.
I obviously had never seen anyone the first day of cooking school walk in and build a tornado potato behind their back. And it was funny because the kids in the class, I was immediately the least liked person in my class.
Oh my God. They were all jealous.
I think it was that. I think it was intimidating for them. Yeah. Here's this kid from Vegas, and there was no other kids from Vegas there at the time. Vegas was just emerging as this culinary place, and the explosion of the Bellagio had just happened. And that was like one of those things where it was like, set my mark, like, here I am. So what we had was Chef Andrini begrudgingly at the end of skills 1 gave me an A-.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
Begrudgingly. And it wasn't like one of those things where it was like, there were certain skill sets that we had and that had to reach at a certain time. And obviously they were very basic. Like you had to be able to dice 2 onions and slice 2 onions in 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I was like,
wow.
And kids were getting thrown out of school because they couldn't accomplish that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because their knife skills weren't there. They weren't taking it seriously. They wouldn't do all these things. And I thought it was hilarious. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. This is not a hard thing for me. But it was like, it's funny because one of the cooks, one of the kids who was in my class was this transfer student from Brazil, and his Brazilian rich father had paid to send him here, and he could not do it. And Chef Andrini failed him.
Okay.
Right? Now this guy, his name's slipping my mind, but obviously I'll remember it later, but he's the lead judge for Top Chef in Brazil.
Okay.
And he fell behind at CIA because CIA's standards were so strict at that time that if you could not accomplish a task that was like a required task, you failed that class and had to retake it. If you failed that class twice, you got kicked out of school for 90 days and had to restart. And that was like coming up through that. I had done all my partying before I went to school, really. And I was just locked in. I loved it. I love school. I had so much fun there. Here's the thing is, I didn't learn as much as everyone else because I didn't have to learn as much as everyone else.
Okay.
But the things that I got to learn there, like how to do croûte, how to do charcuterie, stuff like that, the garmager classes, the pastry classes, those were my favorite classes. And then all the other classes were really easy, and I just got to cook, and this was a lot of fun.
Okay.
But I got to work with Chef Andrini on his certified master chef test. I got to work with Chef Griffiths on a certified master chef test. And those were really cool things and good experience and opportunity for me.
What is a certified master chef test for our audience?
All right. So it's actually a couple of different days. Back in the day, it was like $10,000, which was a huge amount of money.
But now.
to take it, yeah, right? Yeah, it's 20 years ago. They were spending this money to take a test. And so basically, it's the ACF, which is the American Chef Foundation or Certified Chef Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And they have different levels. And the top level you can gain was Certified Master Chef. And I haven't really followed up with the ACF as I'm not really looking to become a certified chef of any way. I think I have an honorary degree.
Okay, I get it. Sure.
These chefs were really going for it, and they had to have a commis or a helper with their test. And that commis was like their sous chef. And basically it's a two-man team like the Bocuse d'Or, right? Except for your goal is to score points and to make sure that everything's perfect. So when I came in and I already had 2 years of 5-star, 5-diamond training under Luke Palladino, Alessandro Strada, and a bunch of other people, I was like the person they were like, hey, chef would ask me like, hey, do you want to go play some racquetball? And I was like, okay, sure, I'll go play racquetball with you, chef, no problem. And I go play racquetball with them, and they'd be like, I need some help. I'm taking the certified chef.
Oh my gosh.
And I would so I became like the guy for a couple of these guys who would help them. And Chef Rudy Johnson and Chef Griffiths and Chef Andrini and all those guys were getting ready. And so I was part of their commis team and got to be a part of that process. And that was really cool. And that was a lot of fun too.
Wow. So that was CIA. And then I had to go back to the real world. So getting to the real world, let's dive into how did you end up on the Food Channel? Like, I know you did Chopped and a couple other shows. What was that like? I know the audience would love to know that, and so would I. In part 2, we'll delve into the behind-the-scenes world of James Trees, offering an exclusive glimpse into his culinary journey. Follow along as we join him on the Food Channel and with Gordon Ramsay and explore the world of Kitchen Nightmares and Hell's Kitchen. Stay tuned for this captivating culinary adventure. Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on Facebook. Find our website in the show notes. Subscribe on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen. Leave a comment with 5 stars and stay tuned for the next episode of Voice for Chefs.